Okay, so we've completed the material and the particle system for the laser beam, but we also need to have a sort of target image that appears to reinforce that we're over a particular object. So I'm going to supply you with an image. So I'll open up the material. Okay, so the material is very straightforward. If we have a look at the material, it's a masked blend mode material, so just make sure you got masked on there, and it's unlit. What that means is it's not affected by any of the lights in the scene. It will be self-illuminated. And the texture, if I go to the texture coordinate, this is the texture. It's just something that I created inside Photoshop, and I saved out as a PNG with, obviously, the checkerboard pattern is transparency, and the image is 128 pixels by 128 pixels. So obviously that's being imported in, and then I'll put that inside the material. So that's the material that you want. Okay, so how do we get this material being moved to the location when we point to? So we go into the VR pawn character, and we go back to, you can see here where we've got the controller mesh and we've got the laser beam. We need to add a static mesh component, and I've called it cylinder vertical. Okay, now all you do is add static mesh. Sorry, what static mesh is. Static mesh. I can't spell static mesh. There we go, and just add static mesh, and then call and give it that name. And as you can see, if you select it, I've told it it needs to be a cylinder. Now you find the cylinder if you drop this down. If you go to by default, show engine contents won't be available. If you go click on show engine contents and then search for cylinder, you'll find the cylinder in here. There we go, done. And then obviously it needs to have a material on it, so we just put the material that you just created before with the rectangle on over the top. So that's done. Now one thing that you got to make sure is that it's quite small, so make sure the scale of the object in X is 0.05 and Y it's 0.05, and in Z it's 0.0002. Okay, so that means it will make it very, very, very thin. Okay, and obviously it'll be slightly bigger than the laser beam, but it won't be as big as the objects in the room. Obviously you can change these numbers as you go along, and obviously once that's completed, you've got everything in there, and then compile and save. Okay, now at the moment nothing is going to happen, okay, without adding the scripting. So let's move on to the scripting. Let's go to the event graph. Okay, now obviously yours at the moment will have the movement of the inputs for the keys and the rotation, and obviously setting up the origin and making sure it works properly. Okay, you can ignore this one. So this is the one which is we're gonna work through to make the laser work. Okay, so we'll make sure that you've got an event tick node in there. So to do that, if you right click and just type in event tick, and you'll create that, and that will create this event. Now what this does is it fires, it could be every 60 times a second. Okay, so what this will do is this will be constantly firing, and will also fire the laser beam. Okay, the next thing is we need the position and the direction of which the controller is pointing for the controller mesh. Now the controller mesh is on the left hand side in the list of components, and we literally drag that into the scene. And then from the controller mesh we need to get world location, so I'll just show you. So just type in get world location, you can see that there, and that will create this node, and we get a forward vector. All a forward vector means is the direction of which the mesh will be pointing. Okay, and you type in get forward vector, and you can see that. Okay, so the next thing is we need to project a point beyond the controller, and that effectively will be the distance that the laser will fire. Okay, so we'll need to multiply that by a scalar amount. Now to do that, all you do is drag from here and then put an asterisk in. An asterisk is for multiplication, and we want to multiply a vector by a floating point. So it's the first one that you pick, and that will generate this one. And type in 5,000, and that's in centimeters. So it'll be constantly firing a line which is from the controller mesh in the direction of which it's facing. Okay, and then we add that to the location of the controller. You can see there I've added a plus 2 vectors. Remember the yellow represents a vector, so we type in add vector. You can see that we can select vector plus vector, and that's on. This is the important one. This is called line trace by channel, and what that does is it projects a line in 3D space, which can be used to detect collisions. Okay, so remember to put line trace by channel. So if we type in line trace by channel, you can see that there's the one that you create, and then we connect the event tick to the executable, and then the start of the line we pump in the get world location, and the end is the point which we generate by adding the forward vector distance plus the location, and then pump that into there. So that gives us a start and end of the trace. Okay, you don't need to put in, make sure debug is none, because we're going to be using the particle system for this. Okay, so that's that first bit done. Okay, I've got through quite a bit there, so we'll continue this in the next video.